What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, March 2nd, 2020, start of a brand new week. Super Tuesday, of course, is tomorrow, and everybody's going to be looking at that. We have a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. And Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. Obviously, the big news coming in over the weekend is Joe Biden wins the South Carolina primary. This is the first primary he's won in his entire career, which stretches back 30 plus years. So he's feeling pretty jazzed about that, and he's hoping that he's going to ride the momentum into Super Tuesday. Apparently, donations started coming in as soon as he won the primary. He picked up something like $5 million over the weekend, riding on that victory. Okay, now, good for Biden, but he keeps making these gaffes. And a lot of people are wondering if, in fact, he's got some mental issues. Now, as I understand it, he's had a couple of brain aneurysms. And he keeps making these gaffes, which make me wonder if he's really mentally competent to be a president. For one thing, he said he's in the state of North South Carolina. He made a comment about how he was looking forward to appointing the first African-American woman to the U.S. Senate. Well, there's two problems with that. There have been two African-American women voted to the Senate, one of whom is campaigning against him for the Democratic nomination, Senator Kamala Harris. But senators are not appointed by the president. They have to be elected. The only time senators are appointed is if one senator passes away or leaves to run for president or gets thrown in jail. Then the governor of the state gets to appoint a replacement, but the president's got nothing to do with it. And it's claimed that 150 million Americans have died from gun violence since 2007. That's half the U.S. population almost. Telling people that he was running for the Senate instead of the presidency, and that he worked on the 2016 Paris Climate Accord with Deng Xiaoping, who died more than 20 years ago. Okay, Pete Buttigieg has dropped out of the 2020 Democratic primary race ahead of Super Tuesday. So has Tom Steyer and Amy Klobuchar as of broadcast time. All right, let's take a phone call now to Jim in Illinois. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
A couple of things, Michael. You're mentioning about Joe Biden and what he did over the weekend. My gut feeling tells me the regular Democrats, they're going to do their damnedest to make sure that he's the nominee. I don't know if they're going to cheat. I don't know if they're going to steal, but they're going to make sure that Joe Biden is going to be the nominee come November.
Well, again, as I said, there's a concern that, he's not mentally fit to be the president. And of course, that means that the Oval Office would be run by a bunch of people in the shadows and, kind of like Reagan in his second term.
Right. Because do you really think that Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee?
I really don't know. I think tomorrow is going to tell us a lot about where the Democrats are going for November.
Right. Now, do you think the major players in the Democratic Party, do you think they would mind stealing or doing some hanky-panky to make sure Bernie Sanders not be the nominee like they did last year?
They're telegraphing the fact that they want him out of the race here, and they did it in 2016, and there's no reason they wouldn't do it in 2020.
I would agree with that. Now, moving on to this virus, Michael, it seems to be getting worse, especially in America. And the sad thing about it, though, there's no testing equipment. I think there's only been like 400 or 500 people being tested, and either they don't have the test or either they're not that concerned, but I think it's getting worse and worse.
We don't really know. That's the part that's really playing with all of our, emotions right now. We don't really know, and a lot of people are imagining the worst. I think up in Washington State is an indicator about what's going on because, you had the governor of the state trash Donald Trump over the coronavirus scare, and then all of a sudden they've got 2 dead, then they've got 5 dead, and now, as of the last report, 6 people have died up there in these nursing homes.
Right. Well, one statement that Trump made, and I don't know where you got this information from, he stated that the virus would disappear once it got warm. But you look at the other countries, in Thailand, South Korea, China, it's in the 70s and 80s. In Australia, it's in the 80s and 90s. So I don't think the weather has anything to do with the virus. This is an unknown that we don't know what the hell to do.
No, we really don't. And again, Trump seems more concerned with controlling the narrative and protecting the economy than really being concerned about what's going on with this COVID-19. But then again, Donald Trump, like Mike Pence, has no medical background whatsoever. And we've seen in the past where Donald Trump really doesn't listen to his advisors that closely.
Right. And final thing, he should be very happy today because I'm pretty sure the Federal Reserve printed some money to make sure the stock market would go up. I think it's like 800 points today.
Oh, it's up 1,200, 1,293 as of this moment. Yeah,
so do you think somebody was pumping money into the system?
Oh, yeah, they had to because, they were blaming the downturn on the fear of the coronavirus. That fear has not gone away. There's no reason for that fear to, if anything, the fear would be a lot worse. I think the plunge protection team got in there with armloads full of cash and just started buying to try and drive the market up. And they succeeded, which means it's right back to where it was when it was overvalued.
Right. Okay. Well, Michael, you take care.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining the network. Back to the phones to Steve Elkins. Steve, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, a question. What happens to the campaign money of the three Democrats that just left? I was talking to Vincent Finelli about this. We were thinking about what can happen. Well, they give it back to the DNC. What happens to it? Can they donate it to the candidate of their choice who they want to support for the presidency? But that would violate or probably offend the donations where they came from because they may not want that money to go to that candidate. So I guess the bottom line is, what happens to the money from the campaigns now?
Well, generally, actually, a lot of these campaigns are running in the red right now. So I don't know that there's that much money left in the campaign treasuries. But my understanding is that if they retire from public life, they can convert that money into personal use.
That's about right for politicians. Yeah, okay. That's it, Mike, for me. Have a great show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Here, getting on back to the news here. Trump is signaling a warning. The Democrats are trying to take Bernie Sanders out of play, and he made this tweet after Buttigieg quits the Democratic presidential race, and basically tweeted on out saying, this is the real beginning of the Dems taking Bernie out of play. Now, amazingly enough, one of the Super Tuesday states is Elizabeth Warren's backyard, and apparently 10,000 people turned out for a Bernie Sanders rally in Warren's backyard. So Elizabeth Warren could actually lose her own state. Would definitely be interesting, to say the least. But again, tomorrow's going to tell the story about where the Democrats are going relative to November. Okay, interesting little story about Mike Bloomberg. Apparently he was giving a speech at a historically black church in Selma, Alabama, and congregants stood up and turned their backs on him, and they were joined by some of the white voters standing in the church with their backs to Bloomberg. This was at Selma's Brown Chapel AME Church. Bloomberg is not doing very well. Gee, how would you like to spend $700 million and get absolutely nothing for it? Speaking of Mike Bloomberg, little story that's coming out of Mint Press News, talking about the silence on Mike Bloomberg's ties to Epstein and other criminals. And this was probably brought about because apparently social media posts linking Mike Bloomberg with Epstein are being censored. They're being deleted. Now, we know that in Epstein's little black book, there was one entry under the name of Mike Bloomberg. Bloomberg is insisting it's not him, that there's another Mike Bloomberg out there who was of sufficient wealth and power and influence to warrant an invitation by Epstein down to his various pleasure palaces here. So one clear weakness in Bloomberg is his ties to key player in the Epstein scandal, including Leslie Wexner, Ghislaine Maxwell, and Epstein himself. Is this really the best that we can do, leaders for our country? It's amazing here. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about coronavirus, COVID-19. Claire's worried about it. I'm worried about it. Don't want to scare people. We don't want people to be in a panic. We want you to be aware. We want you to be concerned. And we want you to pay attention to what's coming out there. And especially, this is a time to really work at determining what is fake news and what is the real deal. And the fact is that you've got people out there saying this is a slate wiper, this is going to be, an extinction level event, and then you've got the other end of the spectrum where people are saying it's nothing, it's going to blow over, it's not as serious as the seasonal flu, it's being fanned up for hysteria for some nefarious purpose, whether it's to sell vaccines, which don't exist yet apparently, or as a distraction from something else, or as an argument to bring about world government. We've got to have a global health authority. But as I mentioned, up in Washington State, there's a total of 6 people have died now. They were in nursing homes. Some of them were medically compromised, and they were elderly. So take that for what it's worth. Okay, apparently dozens of people at the Life Care Center of Kirkland, where the first U.S. death occurred, are now showing symptoms. So we're going to see more deaths there, probably. Worried families are blasting the Washington nursing home where the first gentleman died from coronavirus, and 50 more are ill for not testing patients and ignoring phone calls as it emerges. The facility has a history of failing to control the spread of illness. So one distraught woman has come forward, blasting the facility's handling of the outbreak, telling how she's been kept in the dark over her husband's condition and treatment at the home. Anyway. Apparently, some of the first responders involved with helping the outbreak in Washington are wiped out. Firefighters, medics have all been quarantined, and apparently the fire station that responded to the calls for the assisted living care facility, which has 2 confirmed deaths, well, now combined with one other facility, 6, and 52 with symptoms, has been shut down. There's a sign on the door written in pen saying simply stop. Amazon has told their 800,000 employees to halt travel both internationally and domestically. So a lot of people are taking this very, very seriously. Now, there was this one gentleman who heard stories of other COVID-19 patients being reinfected. He had the disease, he recovered, but just for the heck of it, he got checked out again. Yes, he's positive, he's been reinfected. Apparently, your body's own immune mechanism isn't working properly dealing with this, and that could be a real game changer. New York State admits the first confirmed COVID-19 case as global deaths pass 3,000. A woman who recently traveled to Iran is New York's first confirmed case of the novel coronavirus. This from Governor Andrew Cuomo. Illinois is reporting another presumptive case of coronavirus, bringing the U.S. total to 24. Washington declares a state of emergency, and public health officials in Illinois said Saturday night they had a new presumptive case that would be the state's 3rd case of coronavirus since the outbreak began. That's the next state up that way, by the way. If confirmed by the CDC, the case would increase the total in the U.S. to 24, aside from the evacuees who are all in quarantine right now. So apparently they've had a case in Australia, no links to China. That's the really scary part, is some of these people are coming down with this illness. They haven't done any foreign traveling. They haven't met anybody who did any foreign traveling, but they're still coming down with this, which tells us it's contamination by surface. And now we're hearing that the coronavirus may spread, may survive up to 9 days on a surface, just covered with that little bit of dried phlegm. Story coming out of governmentslaves.news, coronavirus may have spread undetected for 6 weeks in the US. One of the things that makes it really difficult to deal with is that people who are asymptomatic, people who are not displaying symptoms of illness, they don't even know they're sick. and they can still be contagious. Another story also from government slaves. China officials knew of the coronavirus last December and ordered a cover-up, which fits with the theory that this was an accidental release from that BSL-4 lab in Wuhan. The British government is out there saying entire cities may have to be quarantined. France has closed the Louvre as the virus spreads to new fronts. Coronavirus cases surged in Italy. France closed the world-famous Louvre Museum as the epidemic that began in China sent fear rising across Western Europe, threatening its tourism industry. So, yeah, it's popping up all over. I think it's got a foothold here. I think we're on our way to a pandemic. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that probably in about 6 weeks' time, we're going to be seeing some scary numbers here in the United States here. The number of coronavirus cases in Spain reaches 58, and the Pentagon is racing to counter coronavirus threat on their military forces. And the Pentagon is taking care to prevent a slip in national security and readiness following the global spread of the coronavirus. And they've held off on a military exercise. They're quarantining their fleets and curtailing troop movement. So apparently DOD canceled a joint military exercise with South Korea, restricted access to public areas and army installations in Italy, and ordered all ships that had visited countries in the Pacific region to remain at sea for 14 days, essentially a self-quarantine, except 14 days may not be enough. That's just somebody said an assumption. If you're not sick in 2 weeks, you're not going to get sick. Well, there was at least one patient where it was 27 days between their contact with somebody who'd been to China and when they became symptomatic. So, now Disney in Orlando, Florida has quarantined some of their employees out of concerns of infection. Disneyland Tokyo is shut down completely. They just closed the gates and said, no, nobody's coming in here. What's really complicated things, of course, and this is coming from sciencemag.org, is the United States badly bungled the coronavirus testing. They don't have enough test kits. And it's reached the point where states are putting together their own testing kits and the FDA is approving them. So they're trying to get them out there so they can test people. The World Health Organization has shipped testing kits to 57 countries. China had 5 commercial tests on the market 1 month ago and can now do up to 1.6 million tests a week. South Korea has tested 65,000. U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC in contrast, has done only 459 tests since the epidemic began. Rollout of a CDC-designed test kit to state and local labs has become a fiasco because it contained a faulty reagent. All right, we're going to take some more phone calls here. Susan in Wisconsin, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I just want to let you know that the Wisconsin police are really smart up here.
How so?
How so? They're going to, you bring your meth in and they're going to tell you if it has the coronavirus.
That's right. We reported on that last week. And what a great way to find out who meth heads are in your city.
Exactly. I just want to say I've been listening to your show probably since '06, and you're spot on.
Thank you.
You are spot on with everything you do. I'd like to see more girls calling into your show.
Well, everybody's welcome to call into the show as long as they, are polite and informative and, not trying to troll me. Anyway, listen, Susan, stay on the line. I got to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Susan in Wisconsin. And Susan, you wanted to talk politics?
Yeah, about the two-party system.
Well,
I think if we... Go ahead.
I was going to say the two-party system was invented to reduce the amount of money that corporations and the ultra-wealthy had to pay out to control the election. because they would donate to everybody running for office.
Yeah, I mean, like, I label myself as a constitutionalist.
That's a
like
good
my
label.
Close friends, yeah, my close friends label me as an independent. Facebook labels me as a liberal. So I just think people are confused as to what it all means. Or like if you're an independent and you lean to the left, or you're an independent and you lean to the right, I honestly don't think people really know what it means anymore. They're just saying, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm an independent, without actually knowing what each thing is.
Well, I think part of the confusion comes from the parties themselves, which are constantly adopting each other's platforms. And we're seeing the Republicans today, they're just as gung-ho for tax and spend as the Democrats traditionally are. Democrats are becoming as warlike as the Republicans traditionally are. And I think it's basically they're maintaining the illusion that we have a do-ocracy just to convince the American people that we still have some kind of choice in the direction this country is going, but I don't think we really do anymore.
No, I don't think so either. And here's another thing: the burden sharing that President Trump is doing in South Korea. I don't know if that's all good. I've been following South Korea really close because my sister's stationed over there right now.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've got Kim Jong-un up there doing whatever he's doing, and President Trump wants to talk burden sharing with South Korea when the military bases are there rent-free.
Well, my personal opinion is we should be getting out of all of these foreign entanglements. We've got so many problems here at home that need to be taken care of.
Yep. And here's another thing that your listeners can take with a grain of salt with coronavirus. The troops that are in South Korea, I don't know if we've got a base in Italy or not, but
yes, we do.
Those troops are going to be coming home. Those troops are going to be coming home at any time, and we really don't know how long the incubation period is with this.
Well, I just got an email from somebody who says the incubation period is up to 94 days, and they reference an article in The Guardian, which I'm going to post on the next commercial break.
Well, that's just something to keep in mind. I mean, troops are coming home from those places every day.
Well, that's how the Spanish flu spread back in 1918. It was carried around the globe by troops.
Yep, yeah. Well, you stay safe, and I really enjoy your show.
All right, thanks an awful lot here, and we're going to switch over to Joe in Tennessee. And Joe, I'm going to have to take you through the next commercial break. What's on your mind?
I got a couple friends that work for Military Sealift Command, and they're being pulled out of Korea. They're sent to another Saipan or Guam, pre-post ships. But yeah, Korea's bad. There's something about this virus that particularly strikes Koreans, Japanese, and Han Chinese, from what I'm reading. And the big issue with it, in my view, is everybody's talking around it. You know, they're talking about how many people. The big story is like, oh, another person has it in New York, or oh, Rhode Island. No, the real story, and we need to get to the bottom of it, is it a bioweapon? Was it, or is it like a flu, like a normal type flu? Like flus come and go, and you deal with them. Some are worse than others. But if it's a bioweapon, then we should know, because if it's a bioweapon, it's been genetically engineered to go after different groups. It's like SARS. When SARS came out years ago, nobody told you that it mostly struck Asians. They like to have a panic. They like to get everybody all panicked and buying Theraflu and all that. but they knew from the first couple weeks that all the victims were really Asian men. It wasn't until like they couldn't hide it anymore, you know. So that's what really bothers me is they don't give us information. Like I like getting raw information and information that I can make my own judgments from. And they not only do not give us information, they literally sit on information. Like, you know, like I said, when they had that panic about SARS, you think they would tell people, well, it's 99% of the people that are dying from it are Asians. I mean, that's something that I think people should have known.
I agree.
Hold on.
Just stay on the line. We'll be right back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're still talking with Joe in Tennessee. And Joe, you wanted to talk about Biden?
Yeah, I wanted to say that this is playing out just like I expected it to as far as the get rid of Bernie thing. I mean, it's the Ron Paul and Pat Buchanan playbook. You know, you give South Carolina to the loser, you know, half-dead candidate like Bob Dole or John McCain, and now Joe Biden, who looks like he's about to crap his diaper every time I see him on TV. And they do this. You win South Carolina because that's easy for them to fix. And then you do cheat, throw any kind of cheating you can on Super Tuesday because, you know, there's so many things, so many states going on at the same time. It really works to the establishment's advantage as far as stealing the election. So, and then they'll say, oh, I can read it already, you know, oh, well, Joe, you know, by winning South Carolina, he sure got his momentum back. And, you know, and boy, it took all the wind out of Bernie's sails. I mean, you could almost predict what's going to happen. I hope not. I mean, I think Bernie deserves to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. And if they don't cheat, he will be. But I think they're going to cheat. And then Biden, probably by the convention, he'll have a stroke or start showing his dementia to the point where they'll give it to Hillary or one of the other ones. I mean, you can almost see the playbook unfolding right before your eyes. And it's kind of depressing. But at the same time, you know, I've always thought that my thing with Bernie is he went along with that whole Russia fraud after he knew, and everybody in the world knew, that Hillary cheated him out of that election. They all knew, and he knew. And then, like a little bitch boy, he sat there and went along parroting Hillary's line, the sore loser of the election, about Russia collusion. To this day, he still pouts it out. So in my view, karmically, Bernie's a little bitch, and he deserves to lose just for that reason enough, that he could go around and slander Trump with the Russia collusion, and meanwhile support and back Hillary, who robbed him blind, and everybody knew it. I mean, what kind of guy does that? I mean, does he have, you know, to me, that just shows what kind of, you know, a little P, you know, the P word with the U and the S, and I won't finish the rest of it. But that's what Bernie is to me. In that kind of, he should be embarrassed, and they're going to steal it from him again. And you know, he deserves to have it stolen from him again. And then he can sit there with Biden and talk about the Russians and how they cheated Biden out of the election. You know, so the guys like that, you know, if you're going to go along with him, that's what my problem with Ron Paul was. He was a nice guy, but he was a lovable loser. He was elite. Just let him cheat him. You just let him cheat. Let's cheat me. Go ahead. Roll over and take it. How can you have a guy like that as president, you know? So whatever you want to say about Trump, you know, oh, by the way, Trump's got a blimp. And I saw that Ron Paul blimp years ago fly right over my house when I lived in Florida. And I thought it was the greatest thing in the world because Ron Paul had a blimp. Who else had a blimp? You know, yes. And I'm glad to see Trump got a blimp too, you know. So, but back to this thing with the CDC and the health department and all that with this coronavirus, you know, these things are what bothers me so much about it is how politicized these whole issues become. I mean, we need the facts. We got to find out, was it a bioweapon? Who's it killing? You know, is it old people or is it Asian people? Who's at risk the most? Because if you know that you're part of that risk group, you can go to the extra level of precautions. Like for me, I got an ozone machine, a nebulizer for hydrogen peroxide, you know, the hand sanitizers. I'm bringing my pH up. I mean, when I go out, I kind of use hand sanitizers, and you know. But I'm just saying, if I found out like this was killing mostly Asians, and I was Asian, I would definitely be like stepping it up more, you know, or you know. So I think that the fact that they like the panic, the health people, they like people to be all on edge so they can turn it political, that they won't give us enough information. Yeah, look at AIDS. Remember AIDS? Like AIDS, they kept trying to tell everybody how AIDS is going to get in the general population. It's not going to be a gay disease anymore. And all you straight men better be careful. Well, it never crossed over to the straight, heterosexuals. I mean, yes, straight guys that shot drugs and hemophiliacs, but it never really made that cross. But they kept that thread up so that people would be like, yeah, we better throw more money at AIDS because, we might get it, and they kept that panic up about it, but meanwhile they knew the information pretty fast. I mean, scientists are smart. They have supercomputers, they can statistics, and even right now, I guarantee you the CIA, the FBI, the Defense Department, everybody knows what this is, whether it's a bioweapon or not. Why are they keeping us guessing, Shouldn't we have a right to know so we can take preparations if we need to, or not take preparations if it's not going to affect us? That's what I don't get it.
I agree.
Huh?
The only breakout I've seen so far is age, and it is hitting the elderly people much harder, even the non-immunocompromised ones. Apparently, nobody under the age of 15 has come down with this yet.
Yeah, and that's what my whole point is. It's let's get some clean information and get it out to the people. We're not stupid, most people, but they don't want that because they do treat us like we're stupid, and they want to manipulate the crisis, like Ron Manuel said. Don't let a crisis go to waste. And it's part of this whole thing that bothers me is if it was a bioweapon and it's been released and it's a generated crisis, is I have to, in a way, I'm not using this to blame Trump, but I'm saying when you don't arrest these people that have attempted coups against you, and you let people get away with doing what they've done to this president, then you just leave them to cook something else up against you. So until he goes out and indicts and arrests these coup plotters and these deep state people, you can expect these kind of issues to pop up here and there. I mean, God knows where this came from. But I'd like to know, I'm sure there's a history on it. I mean, if it was genetic, they say some Indian group came out and said it was a bioweapon from the Chinese, and it's got HIV, TB, and corona mixed together. It was spliced or something. And next thing you know, they put a bunch of threats on these guys, and they had to withdraw the paper. So what's going on, Why don't they want us to know? And what else, so once we know what we're dealing with, we can deal with it. But it's the unknown part that really bothers me, and I know that somebody knows. They know what it is. They're just not telling us.
Well, my theory is that it was a work-in-progress biological weapon. It wasn't really finished, but it was accidentally released from that BSL-4 lab in Wuhan. And they don't really know what it's capable of doing. That's the problem. It wasn't a finished product. And my concern is if it's unstable, then it can mutate. But again, I would like to see a list of the infected and the dead broken down by ethnicity. We already have the age data. I'd like to see a breakdown based on whether the patients are immunocompromised.
Well, my theory is that it was a bioweapon that we developed, but the Chinese were researching it to try to figure a way to counter it or to find a inoculation against it. And then somehow or another, while they were doing research in that regard, it got loose. And I do think it's an Asian bioweapon. And but statistically, we'll have to see. Every cluster you see where it is mostly has to do with some kind of an Asian angle, as far as Chinese being there. Even in Italy, Chinese are all over Milan and Venice where they're getting it. So, and then like you said, you get older people that are susceptible to these kind of things to begin with, and it's going to wreak havoc on the old people no matter where. But what are you going to do? So,
well, we keep researching. We keep looking at the numbers for ourselves, and right now the R0 seems to be between 4 and 6, and looking very carefully at the lethality numbers, for the most part, it seems to be 2 to 3%, which means it's a weapon that's designed to sicken people, but it only kills those who already have underlying medical problems. But again, we don't know. I mean, there was that 20-year-old girl who had just come back from a hotspot in Italy, and she came down with it. Now, whether
Did
she's
it
going
kill
to
her?
die or not, we don't know.
Oh, okay.
Not yet, at any rate.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm going to work on my immune system, and I'm doing all kinds of these things. I kind of stepping it up as things get more and more, life-threatening, and that the spread continues. And I wish they would give us some more information so we know, like, how much we should. I can't see myself literally taping down my house, but I have limited. I'm not going anywhere where there's crowds for a little while. And if I do,
Yeah.
I'm using the nebulizer and the hand sanitizers. If they call me to go fly to a job, I'm not going, and not until this thing blows over. Now, you were saying that, and they were saying, I read today, that these flus can come back like in waves every year. And I read today, like, it can come back, and next time it can kill even more people or something. It's like, boy, if this was a bioweapon, anybody that had anything to do with this should be put up against the wall and shot. I'm telling you. Because this is something that people do. We don't need this, We don't need that. People don't need this. It's going to kill a lot of people and destroy a lot of lives and cost people money and jobs and this and that. And travel. I mean, because I like to travel, but I'm not traveling, and I'm not the only one. So it's going to hurt a lot of people. And the people that had anything to do with this, they really should be punished. Morally, too. I mean, it's say, well, I work for the defense. What am I supposed to do? I'm sorry, Bioweapons, come on now. I'm saying, it's supposed to be, it's like chemical weapons and stuff. I thought they did away with that,
Well, they were supposed to. There were treaties
specific,
signed to get rid of chemical and biological weapons, but the United States still maintains stockpiles in laboratories. So it's a case of another treaty that the United States has not complied with. Anyway, Joe, the phone lines are loaded up, so I'm going to let you go here. And we're going to go to Kelly in Austin. Kelly, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
They're all about Joe's call. I've gotten out of the country 1, 2, maybe 3 times a year every year for the last 15 years, and I'm just going to cut it off until this stuff blows over. It's not worth it. I'm not even going to travel around in this country. I'm going to stay put here until I'm certain that matters have improved. This weekend, I was curious about the 1918 flu, and so I got on YouTube and I watched several documentaries on that flu, and I recommend that people do that. There's some very good documentaries that, to me, I didn't realize how severe that flu was, how rapidly it spread, and how lethal it was until I watched these documentaries. And it occurred to me that while we don't know much about this flu right now, it won't take much for this thing to mutate and to become potentially as disastrous as that H1N1 flu that broke out in 1918. It actually mutated twice.
Yes.
And interestingly enough, the big reason that it spread around this country, you mentioned before, was one troop movements. And the inability or unwillingness of politicians to heed the advice of medical personnel, the public health physicians, and the military. They had to get those soldiers over there to beat the Hun, and they were moving soldiers who were infected all around the country, and they contacted people from one end of the country to the other, and people were dropping dead by the thousands. More than 600,000 Americans died as a result of that. And many people, here's how severe it was. So people who were deemed to be healthy in the morning were dead by evening. It was a disastrous flu. And these things might mutate rapidly, as you know, and it's possible that something like this could mutate just a little bit, enough to become as lethal as that swine flu in 1918. So I think people better take this thing very seriously. I do encourage you to look at some of those documentaries on YouTube. They are really very eye-opening. I thought I understood I thought I had a clear idea of how severe it was. No, I didn't. That flu actually was absolutely devastating. There were 500 million people estimated to have been infected by that, and up to 100 million people around the world died as a result of that flu.
That's more than died in both world wars.
Absolutely. It's the kind of thing that it scared some public health officials so much that they were concerned that if it got out of control, they could literally wipe out most of the human race. having watched the documentaries I did this weekend, I have to admit that I think we're very lucky that it wasn't any more severe than it was. So this is something I think we all need to take very seriously. And as Joe said, if somebody engineered this, he ought to be hanged. This is unforgivable if it's an engineered virus.
Well,
and one of the points you mentioned earlier that the Democrats aren't quite as bad as Republicans on the matter of war. I disagree with you. If you go back and you look at the major wars in this country over the last century, who controlled Congress at the beginning of every war? Democrats, World War I. Democrats, World War II. Democrats pushed us into Korea. Democrats escalated Vietnam. The Democrat Party does not have a good record when it comes to war. Now, the Republicans don't either, but the Democrats, frankly, are as bad or worse. Anyway.
Getting on back to Joe's phone call where he was saying that China got this COVID-19 from the United States. They may have gotten components both from Canadian and U.S. labs. They just bought them outright. But the fact that they were culturing the virus out of live bats tells me that whatever this is was being manufactured at that BSL-4 lab in Wuhan.
Absolutely. Apparently there's an author named Dean Koontz.
Yes.
I read one of his books. He wrote a book in 1981 about a virus that broke out of Wuhan, China. He called it the Wuhan 400 virus. And he described in that book in 1981 much of what you're seeing right now. That virus was a more lethal virus, but as he describes it. But it's curious that he singled out Wuhan as a manufactured virus as something that broke loose and killed many millions of people.
It was known back then that China had a BSL-4 bioweapons lab in Wuhan. So, Dean Koontz, simply locked into that to give it a little bit more verisimilitude.
Well, perhaps he did. Okay, Mike. Well, good show again today. I'll be curious to hear what other comments are about the flu. But I do encourage you to look up those videos on YouTube. Just type in 1918 swine flu pandemic, and you'll see a number of these. They're very well done.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to take a break for commercials. We got more callers waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the phones to Terry in California. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Mike, at the right time, look for an announcement from the government and fake news to hype up the fact that they think the virus is going to be is transmitted through paper money. And it's contaminated. Be careful you don't touch paper money. And then the next week they're going to say, bring all the money into the bank and turn it in. We're going to credit your account. And then when this thing blows over, we're going to print brand new clean bills and you can come in and get them. And of course, that day will never come. And in the meantime, just use your debit card where only you can touch it. And we're going to shut down one of the main ways that the virus is transmitted. What are your thoughts?
There's a flaw in that thinking because germs couldn't live on the money I make.
That's a good point. So you're all set with your debit card. We don't have to worry about you.
No, I don't think you have to worry about me. Heaven doesn't want me and hell's afraid I'll take over. That's why I keep getting kicked back here.
Okay. Well, the other thing I wanted, a theory that I had, maybe far out, is that maybe there's something with the elderly where they, put something in, design the virus to attack the elderly. You just think what it would do. It would solve a Social Security problem that they have, and it would go a long way to solving a Medicare problem that they have. We're just, the seniors are useless eaters anyway, and that's where most of the, well, I mean, according to them. And
okay.
You can see I'm a conspiracy theorist,
Well,
All right, Mike, those are the 2 points I wanted to make. So just get ready for Hillary to come in and save the day, because all the candidates will be dropped out except the undesirable ones.
Please, no. Please, no. Please, no. All right. Well, thanks an awful lot for the phone call, Terry. We're going to switch over to Laura in Colorado. Aloha, Laura. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I wanted to kind of just add a little bit in, and I'll be quick about it. I do a lot of genealogy work, and the Silk Road running between China and Europe, or specifically China and the Mediterranean area, went on for a very, very, very long time. And because people couldn't keep their pants on, there was a tremendous amount of racial miscegenation that went on.
Yes.
These genes, if this thing is a DNA-specific virus, this may be one of the reasons why you're seeing a lot of people in in Iran. I don't think Iraq has admitted to anything yet. Maybe they have. But in Iran and in Italy, you're going to see some of those genes in some of those people.
Okay, Laura, I need to put you on hold. We got to take a break for station identification. We'll come right back to you after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to go back to Laura in Colorado. And Laura, just kind of pick up where you left off.
Okay, before anyone wants to scream that I'm a racist, definitely am not. But I'm just saying that because there has been so much movement about on the globe the last few hundred years, the Silk Road was open, people came and went, they took wives, they did all that. This may be a reason why certain areas, if this is a manufactured or rather a manipulated situation with the virus, and it is specific to certain DNA. Now, there sure isn't any protesting going on over there in China for democracy right now, is there? And I want to throw that out
in Hong Kong. There is the protests in Hong Kong are still going on, and the police are using tear gas and water cannon and all that stuff.
Well, I had heard some time ago that there had been some protests going on in some of the cities in mainland China, but that has completely stopped.
Yeah.
So, that's just a coinky-dink, as they would say on TrueNews.com. But, another thing I wanted to throw out there, too, that I think is really important is in December, the second week of December, I live on an organic farm 40 miles east of Colorado Springs. Massive military in and out all the time, okay? And we went into town. We're very healthy. I do fight type 2 diabetes naturally by taking berberine and controlling diet. I'm in my late 50s. My husband and I were in the city. The snow was blowing, and a military person rammed our car by running a red light. And it only tore the license plate off, but I shook her hand. Within 24 hours, I had a 104-degree fever that came out of the blue. I'm not in the city very often. So I went to my primary care doctor, and the first thing she said was, "Looks like you've got some kind of virus, quote unquote. This is the second week in December." We were sick for 3 straight weeks. We actually thought we were going to die. We have a nebulizer. We've got colloidal silver. We've got all kinds of goodies. And we have never been so sick in our lives. Now, I don't believe that this thing started in mid-December. I think it started way before that. Bill Gates apparently made some kind of an admission or a statement at the World Economic Forum in October. So maybe this thing was even around before that. But, as we can always count on the communist red Chinese to tell us the truth about everything, how long was it around? Did we have coronavirus here in my house and survive it? I don't know, but our primary care doctor was totally stumped. They stuck this horrible thing way up in my nose. It was extremely painful. And they came back and said, "No, you don't have the flu." So we don't know what we had, and we were so extremely sick. It wasn't just respiratory. It wasn't just extreme pain in the trachea, and neither one of us had a voice for 3 weeks. The real bad pain in the throat, up into the sinuses, and the vomiting and diarrhea for 5 days. We couldn't hold down a bite of food. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I did have the primary care give me a Z-Pack, which is a 5-day, real strong antibiotic that fights bacterial pneumonia. And primary care gave that to me the first day I went in there, which was when I had the 104 fever. And it was just, it didn't help. It really did not help. She looked right at me and said, "You've got some kind of virus." "Oh, no, no, no. I've been out cleaning the chicken pen." I thought maybe I had breathed some dust that had gone up in my nose doing that job and, gotten in my throat and my trachea. That's why I asked for a Z-Pack, because I thought, well, this thing is bacterial. But I'll tell you what, I really do think, Mike, that we had the coronavirus. I've told it to numerous people that know us. They know we're people of integrity. They've been in shock over it. The only thing different that I have done, other than just go to the grocery store, way out, a far out grocery store, not in the middle of the city, that I had shaken the hand of the lady that rammed our car. And she was a military officer. She was real upset. And I said, "Look, you go home, fix your car. I'll go home, fix my car. Don't want to call the popo. Don't want them involved in my life. All you did was tear up our license plate, off the front bumper. We'll fix it ourselves. Let's just all go home." And we did. And she shook my hand and she hugged me in a parking lot. So that's all I'm going to say. Can't prove anything, but I think this thing has been around. On the western slope in Colorado, about the second week of our illness, which was right around Christmas, we heard there was a horrible outbreak of a virus out on the western slope of Colorado, and schools had been closed for like a week around the Christmas holiday right there, like right before Christmas. So who knows? Who knows? I'm just throwing it out there and giving everybody just something to think about.
Well, did you save the contact information for the lady who hit your car? Because the first thing I would want to do is to call her and see if she'd come down sick.
She was a lieutenant in the military. She was coming out of Peterson Air Force Base and ran the stoplight. And like I said, snow was blowing. It wasn't real bad, but she, I guess, thought she could beat the light. And we were pulling out. She at the front of the car. We didn't exchange information. It was cold. It was windy. It was like, "You go home, fix your car. We'll go home, fix our car. Don't got to get the cops involved in our lives. We're headed home to our farm. Have a nice day." And so that's the way we prefer to handle most things anyway. So.
Well, I understand that, but it would be nice to know that. Anyway, thank you very much for the phone call and the information. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining the network. On Saturday, New York's Governor Cuomo said his state would immediately begin using its own test kit developed in-state after asking the FDA for permission to do so. And the FDA said it would allow some laboratories to immediately use tests they have developed and validated to achieve more rapid testing capacity for COVID-19. Now, BBC is reporting that there is this Shincheonji church with 1,900 members. They tested 600 who didn't have any symptoms. 70% were confirmed with coronavirus. That is the really scariest aspect about this, that people who are not symptomatic, people who don't even know that they're sick, can be contagious. Let's see what happens with that one. Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, who Joe Biden falsely claimed was being muzzled, said yesterday that community spread of the new coronavirus, in which cases cannot be directly traced to anyone, are becoming more common throughout the United States of America. It's surface contact. It's surface contact is what they're talking about here. And of course, all across the country, the panic buying has begun. Costco's, Walmart's, they're selling out of everything. They're selling out of hand sanitizers. They're selling out of storable food. So, and again, I don't want to be the cause of a panic, but please be aware, please be concerned, because, our government, like the government of China, is trying to downplay all of this. Perception control, narrative control, keep the economy going. China is saying that they're coming back from this and that the factories are running again. But NASA did a satellite scan over China, and their pollution levels are way, way down, which tells us the factories are still closed and they're not putting out the pollution. Grocers are preparing for a surge in demand as the virus spreads. U.S. shoppers stock up on dry goods, sanitizer, and cleaning supplies. Now, you've probably heard from several people, don't bother wearing those masks, even the N95, N99 one. And the Surgeon General came out on Twitter saying that a run on the mask could risk a shortage harmful to public health professionals. In other words, they're going to be using the masks. They just don't want you ordinary people using them up. We're going to take another phone call. James in Vancouver. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I got back to some travel agency people, and all the flights coming in from Hong Kong to Vancouver. This is, I went on the 29th of February. That was Saturday, I asked, and they said all the flights coming in from Hong Kong to Vancouver are coming in normally. There's been no reduction in those flights, and there has been a bit of a reduction on flights coming into Vancouver from China, but these have not, they're still coming in.
Do we know what the passenger manifests are looking like? Are these planes full, or are they only carrying like 4 people?
I'm guessing that because the aircraft coming in from China are less than before, that these are not full flights. That's a guess.
Okay.
Because they don't probably want to run empty aircraft. So, and then I checked with my students.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I checked with some of my students, and they seem to think that things are coming in normally. There's no quarantine of the Vancouver airport here. Some hotspot. Yeah.
I think in the case of the Spanish flu, the reason it got out of control was it was too little too late. And again, there was a perception management component because the Spanish flu had nothing to do with Spain. It emerged out of a U.S. military base, Camp Funston.
Right.
And the story is they were playing with experimental vaccines there. So.
Right. Well, yeah, that, like I said, according to my grandmother, that was quite devastating. Made an impact on her life, I think.
Well, I lost some ancestors to they called it the grip. When they weren't calling it Spanish flu, they called it the grip.
Grip, yeah. I heard a caller from South Carolina, James in South Carolina, talked about technologies that are being kept secret. I have some information on that. If you'd like to have it sometime, I can send it along.
Please do.
I sent one of my books down to Mr. John Statmiller down in Round Rock. I sent him a book a couple weeks ago. This is before this flu thing came up. I sent 4 copies to all the alternative media that I listen to, and I sent one to Mr. Statmiller. So anyway, that's all I got for now.
All right, well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are empty, 800-313-9443. Now, Iran's former ambassador to the Vatican, that in mind, and prominent cleric Hadi Khosrowshahi died of the COVID-19 virus, according to local media last Thursday. And apparently he was 81 years old. This thing does hit the elderly very, very hard, and he died in a hospital in Iran. An advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, has died from the coronavirus, and apparently other top Iranian officials have been infected. And it has not escaped a lot of people's notice that this COVID-19 seems to be hitting the 2 countries that the United States currently views as enemies, China and Iran. Now, I still think it's an accidental release, or at least the one in China was an accidental release. Who knows what's going on out there? Okay, we got another caller on the line. Paul in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, as your last caller said, it is true. The flights are still coming in. I've been saying it. Now, listen, we have a quote. Let me see if I got a quote. But either way, there's an excellent article over at the Daily Costs from, what's that sound, by the way?
What
Hearing
sound?
A beep. I'm just getting a beep in my ear. Anyway, so in the name of the article is called "Are Flights from China Really Banned?" by Keith D.B. It was over at the Daily Cost, and this fellow looked into it. And lo and behold, you could buy yourself a ticket from China to the United States, or vice versa, even today. Now, here we have a quote from our great leader, Donald J. Trump, where he said, and this was from February 25th, crying Chuck Schumer is complaining for publicity purposes only that I should be asked for more money than $2.5 billion to prepare for coronavirus. If I asked for more, he would say it's too much. He didn't like my early travel closings. I was right. He is incompetent, unquote. So that's a quote from Donald Trump from his tweet. He's a tweeter, not a leader, on February 25th, 2020, making fun of Chuck Schumer and claiming that he is, first of all, has closed or stopped travel. He didn't stop travel. The flights are still coming in. It's been over a month. And you know what he's setting up? Once you allow this to happen, what we're going to go through is what I call, it's going to be like a whack-a-mole of fighting this disease now, where the CDC is going to be chasing around one site and going to one spot. Then it's going to pop up in another spot. And then they're going to chase that spot. Then they're going to go to another spot. And by that time, as we've already seen, it's too late. And that's, as I've argued, is the problem with of the mistake of having businessmen having too much authority, being too subsumed with his own impeachment trials and issues, while he should have been focusing on the health of the nation, protecting the borders. And obviously, since the disease was pretty rampant and the films were coming out in January, he should have expedited. And get this, Donald Trump, he should have followed through to make sure his underlings, because that's what competent leaders do. That's what we hired him for, right?
Yes.
We employed him by voting for him. And we expect him to protect our borders and to protect our people in a competent manner. So he says he's quarantining and stopping the flights. He didn't follow through. So, and that's why my argument is he needs to be fired. He's a failure. He's not delivering. He's not doing his job. And remember what he made himself famous doing, firing people who were failures on TV. And that's why we need to collectively start firing Donald Trump, even though the Democrats don't have anybody to offer. The only person who has any sense is Tulsi Gabbard. It's a shame.
I agree.
She actually advocated on stopping the flights. But the flights aren't stopping. Donald Trump isn't delivering. Is he deluded? Does he not just go to see if the flights are actually coming into LAX? Is he surrounded by yes men and minions?
Yes.
Who just say, yes, Mr. President, the planes have stopped coming in. He doesn't go check on his underlings to make sure they're doing the work? Failure, your name is Donald Trump. He's a failure. On that note, thank you, Michael.
All right, you got it. Thanks an awful lot. Okay, getting on back to Iran. The Iranian Health Ministry recorded 523 new cases in the past 24 hours, bringing the country's known total to 1,501. That marks a 53% increase in just one day. As of right now, Iran's parliament is closed until further notice. So apparently this has hit the leadership of Iran very, very hard. Yesterday, Pope Francis finally made a public appearance. It's the first time in 4 days, following what the Vatican has called a slight indisposition that forced him to cancel some audiences and activities. Remember, the Pope is also the Bishop of Rome, and he's supposed to preside over the religious services in the Vatican itself. However, another story and this one came out from Recombinomics.co, says that the Vatican confirms that Pope Francis and 2 of his aides have tested positive for COVID-19. The 3 new cases add up to the over 400 cases confirmed in Italy under a week. So, coronavirus death toll in Italy jumps to 29 as the number of infected passes 1,000. All right, the police in Venice, Italy, raided a mosque during Friday prayers for ignoring the coronavirus rules that prohibits events with meetings of people. All right, Donald Trump is out there saying the hoax is on them. And this would be a time to sort of clear something up here right now. There's a report that is being circulated by Democrats in the corporate media that Donald Trump called the coronavirus a hoax. And what he was talking about was the Democrats hyping it up to try and damage him. That is the hoax. Media pushes the lie anyway. Okay, we got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And a reminder that Republic Broadcasting is holding a fundraising drive right now. And folks, those of you who have not yet donated, and I'll be honest, those of you who already did donate once, please donate again, because we need to stay on the air. Look around and see what's going on between the coronavirus, between Super Tuesday, between the election year and everything. We need to keep on the air to get the truth out to you so that you can make good choices. We're trying to keep you fully informed in the best Jeffersonian sense here. And just imagine for a minute, one day getting on up, flipping on your computer or your radio, and all of a sudden, we're not here. It could actually happen if you don't step up. The only way we're going to get the big money influence out of media and out of the flow of information in this country is for the little money to unite together in the goal of restoring our republic here. So the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. All right, getting on back to the coronavirus. President Trump is out there saying that border security is health security. The Democrat policy of open borders is a direct threat to the health of all Americans. Well, I've been saying that for months now because the illegal immigrants are, pouring over the border. They're not being given medical checks. Even in the heyday of American immigration at Ellis Island, everybody was given a medical check, and those who weren't healthy were quarantined or sent back to their original country. So Trump held this Keep America Great rally in North Charleston, South Carolina, Friday, in which he made that point. We have to have secure borders if we're going to keep this country healthy. And, shutting down the plane flights from the hot zones would be a good idea. But what happens if somebody decides they want to come to this country and they go to Mexico first and just walk across that border? Now, Senator Cotton is still out there. He's convinced that China is being very nefarious about, shall we say, less than forthcoming about what's going on with COVID-19. He says China is still lying to the world about the coronavirus. And here he's saying the virus can live up to 9 days outside the body. And China has engaged in rampant malpractice, dishonesty, and deceitfulness from the very beginning. If they hadn't concealed the outbreak of this virus in early December from the World Health Organization and their own people, they might not have only protected their own people more effectively, but prevented it from spreading so far around the world. They are still lying to their own people. They're still lying to the world. They are responsible for the spread of this virus outside of their own borders. That's one reason why we need to take a new look once again at our entire relationship with China, in particular the relationship we have in trade, where we have so many of our medical devices and equipment, even basic pharmaceuticals, are being manufactured in China. Yeah, that's a problem. Literally start running out of necessary medical supplies just when we really need them. So hopefully somebody is going to kick something into high gear to start getting the stuff manufactured locally. The other day, last week, we were talking about how Donald Trump may use an executive order to compel certain companies to start manufacturing facial masks. All righty, we have a caller on the line. Joe in Pennsylvania, aloha. I'm probably going to have to take you through the next commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yes, with this coronavirus issue here, I have a question for you. Okay, most of us are living from paycheck to paycheck.
Yes.
Okay? You know, they're telling us that, you know, we need to have 6 months of food, 6 months of money to survive in the bank. We don't. My question to you is, what happens if we're quarantined to our homes or apartments and we're unable to pay our mortgages or we're unable to pay our rent? Can we get evicted? Are we going to be thrown out on the street? Does that mean we're going to be rounded up and put into a camp somewhere? That's my question.
You raise a very good point, and I would hope that if massive quarantining becomes the norm, that there would be some kind of an executive order out there saying that salaries and wages would have to be continued. You know, most companies, you know, you do have a certain amount of sick time that you can take and still get your paycheck. But you're right, you're raising a very good point. A long enough quarantine is going to turn some people into homeless. And if COVID-19 gets into the general homeless population, it's going to be everywhere.
Well, fortunately for me, going off to the side a little bit here, I was displaced from my career. Company was going bankrupt. Was bought out by another company in the UK. They came in and they did cuts. I was forced to go into early Social Security retirement. I was out of work for 4.5 months. I finally find a job, you know, working for the state. I'm part-time, got no benefits, so there you go.
All right.
That's it.
Okay, well, Joe, thank you for the phone call. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go into the international news now. I think we've spent enough time on the COVID-19 here. Apparently, a U.S. carrier strike group has entered the Mediterranean as Syria and Turkey move to a state of war. So it's really starting to come unglued over there. And apparently, the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower crossed through the Strait of Gibraltar and entered the Mediterranean Sea late Friday, accompanied by multiple support ships. Now, in a phone call with Erdogan, Trump is backing Turkey on Syria to an extent. Qualifier on that. So Trump called Erdogan on Friday, and according to White House officials, Trump backed Turkey absolutely in Syria, demanding Syria and Russia immediately halt their offensive in Idlib province. The White House comments again presented Turkey's operations as trying to de-escalate the situation in northwest Syria, when it would be more correct to say they are trying to keep Islamist groups from being defeated outright by the Syrian government. Turkey has shot down 2 Syrian warplanes and destroyed 100 tanks as it launches a military offensive against the Moscow-backed regime after airstrikes that killed 34 of its soldiers. Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar announced the operation dubbed Spring Shield today and vowed any attack on Turkish forces or observation posts in Idlib would be met with retaliation under the country's right to self-defense. Well, they're not defending their country. They're sitting on somebody else's country right now. Unless Erdogan is already out there saying, well, we own this now. This is now part of Turkey. Anyway, tensions between Ankara and Damascus were blown sky high on Thursday after the Assad regime targeted Turkish soldiers in northern Syria. Well, they shouldn't have been in northern Syria. Turkey's relationship with Moscow was also strained as 3 Russian journalists were detained in Istanbul. So this thing is definitely spiraling out of control. All righty. Russia cannot guarantee the safety of Turkish aviation in Syria after Damascus shuts the Idlib airspace. Apparently, Damascus has declared a no-fly zone over that area above Idlib. And as tensions run high after Thursday's spike in hostilities, the Syrian state news agency Sana reported on Sunday the Turkish regime's terrorist forces downed 2 aircraft thought to be fighter jets. Actually, they were Sukhois. Russian Defense Ministry announced on Sunday that it could no longer guarantee the safety of Turkish aircraft flying over northern Syria after Damascus moved to close the airspace over the embattled province of Idlib. Damascus announced earlier on Sunday that it would treat any aircraft that crosses into the airspace of Syria's northwest as a hostile target. So, yeah, that looks like there's no pulling back from that one. Iran and Hezbollah are warning Turkey, all your forces are in our line of fire. The Iranian Advisory Center in Syria, which takes part in the fighting in northern Syria, issued a press release to the news agency U-News in reaction to the recent confrontation between the Syrian army and the Turkish army. It should be noted that the Iranian Advisory Center is made up of the group of Iranian experts who advise the Syrian state and its armed forces. And this is the first statement they have actually publicly issued. Okay, early on March 2nd, units of the 25th Special Mission Forces Division, formerly the Tiger Forces, returned control of the town of Sarakib in eastern Idlib after the Turkish army and its al-Qaeda allies fled from the area. Now, China is against Turkey. They're now providing the anti-missile FD-2000 air defense system to Damascus. This is coming from the Chinese news website Sina.com after the several Israeli attacks by Syria by its air-ground missiles and the partial failure of the Russian air defense anti-missile defense. Now, that's a new piece of information. China is stepping on in with there. Pompeo wants missiles for Turkey to confront Russia and Syria. This could be the flashpoint for a full-on war with Russia. I don't think that's a good idea. Call me silly. I don't think war with Russia is a really good idea. Anyway. Now, the United States has rejected key talks on extending the soon-to-expire treaty that limits strategic nuclear arms. This is the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. It's due to expire in a year. Russia is saying, let's extend it. The United States is saying, no, we don't want to. We're going to be building more bombs, and I hope they don't use them. But you need to keep in mind, for all the talk about Iraq's nukes and Iran's non-existent nukes, well, they didn't have them in Iraq either, or North Korea's nuclear weapons, there's only one country that's ever actually used nuclear weapons against the civilians of another country, and that is the United States of America. All right, well, pardon me, the good news from yesterday was the U.S. and Taliban sign a peace deal that will send all American troops home in 14 months and pave a way to the end of the 18-year Afghanistan war. Maybe, maybe not. We're already hearing the war hawks all over TV. They were on Fox News earlier today saying, well, we're going to have to keep some kind of a force in Afghanistan because we don't trust the Taliban to deal with al-Qaeda and the terrorists. And already there's a big monkey wrench in this deal because the Afghan government is refusing a prisoner swap. And as a result, today, the Taliban announced they were resuming offensive operations, not against U.S. forces, but against the Afghan forces. As I mentioned earlier in the show, police are using pepper spray and tear gas on the protesters in Hong Kong. Over in France, lawmakers from the left and the right of the spectrum filed motions of no confidence in the government after it pushed a controversial pension reform through the parliament on Saturday. This is what people are rioting in the streets about over there. And the whole world is going crazy. It really is. It is really going crazy. Over in Israel, extremist Israeli settlers uprooted hundreds of olive trees and grapevines in the Al-Qadar neighborhood south of the West Bank city of Bethlehem. Local sources reported that the Israeli settlers uprooted 300 trees in the farm of a Palestinian farmer, Nazar Ismail Marzouk, in the area of Zikanda, which lies between the settlements of Daniel and Eleazar. Meanwhile, the settlers uprooted 200 old olive trees and 80 grapevines in the farm of Marwan and Anas Salah, which is located near the settlement of Eleazar. Now, the reason they refer to these as old olive trees, when you plant an olive tree, it is 10 years before it produces usable, saleable crop. They're very slow growing. It's a hardwood. So when they go down, they chop down these trees, they've ended these farmers' livelihood for olives for a minimum of 10 years. Okay, talking about the economic news here, as we mentioned earlier in the program, the Dow ended 1,200 points up, which I am not buying that this had anything to do with the market, because they blamed the downturn over the last week on the fear of the coronavirus. Well, that fear is still there. It hasn't gone away over the weekend. So I think the plunge protection team just got a whole bunch of new money from the Federal Reserve, went on in and started buying to drive the market back up again, which hasn't fixed the problem of an overvalued stock market. Of course, right now, Donald Trump has basically founded his entire re-election campaign on the economy looking good. And Trump is hardly the first president to use those stock market numbers as a banner saying the economy is good, the economy is good. Bill Clinton did it. George W. Bush did it. So, anyway. Coronavirus is making the weakest parts of U.S. corporate debt boom wobble. And analysts are saying, brace for things to get worse. This article says the rapid spread of COVID-19 dealt a blow to investor confidence in the biggest U.S. corporate debt boom on record. So again, the fact that the Dow was shoved up 1,200 points is highly suspicious here. Gold jewelry selling sees a frantic surge after a price spike and volatility. Now, gold was really going up last week, and then all of a sudden, a whole bunch of trades were put on the gold to drive it back down again using paper gold. Front month gold futures spiked to almost 1,700 an ounce, leading up to last week's decimation amid coronavirus fears and a widely growing acceptance that central bankers will once again be stimulating the global economy and supporting asset prices, which is obviously what happened today. Okay, getting into other areas here. Apparently, Democrats in Ohio, California, and Oregon are now pushing laws demanding that private property owners allow the homeless to camp on their lands. And this was sparked by a homeowner in Los Angeles claims the local government is preventing him from removing a homeless encampment on his property. This is coming out of the Gateway Pundit. Well, so much for property rights, huh? Now, as you know, as the situation has deteriorated in Turkey, Erdogan opened the borders. They'd had this deal where Turkey was keeping all these Syrian refugees inside Turkey. Now the borders are open, and the first 18,000 Syrian refugees crossed the Greek border amid fresh tear gas clashes with guards after Turkish President Erdogan vowed to open the doors to Europe and to keep them open. And there have been clashes with the Greeks at that border. Chaos as thousands of refugees charge Greek border en masse. 15,000 surge into EU border town. Those poor people in Europe, they've had enough problems with the refugees. They're about to get a lot worse. Apparently, Greeks revolt against the migrant centers. Apparently, they set fire to one of them. Government uses the military to repel the migrant invasion. What a mess all these war hawks and bankers have made of this planet. You want to know why advanced alien civilizations don't visit us? They take one look and say, these primitive people, why would we bother? Why would we bother? Greed and violence, that's the hallmarks of the human race here. Apparently, Harvey Weinstein will get special treatment in custody because they don't want another Epstein incident. They're concerned that Weinstein might get suicidal. Still reeling from the uproar after Jeff Epstein supposedly hanged himself in the Manhattan lockup last year, jail officials are taking extraordinary steps to monitor their newest high-profile inmate. Weinstein will always have his own cell, will constantly have a dedicated team of correction officers with him, and could even be shipped to a facility outside the city. The last thing they want is another Jeffrey Epstein incident. I think they may get one. I think if Weinstein does not think he's going to get off with a wrist slap at his sentencing, which is now, what, 1 week away? Week and a half away? That he might try and fake his own death? So. And we're still looking at the case of Philip Haney, who was a whistleblower on Barack Obama's Department of Homeland Security. He was found dead on the side of a highway in what police initially thought was a suicide. Now, however, police are backtracking their suicide, saying the initial reports were simply misinformation. Well, that tells us it didn't come from the police to begin with. Anyway, Haney was found dead last Friday in a park and ride a week ago. Last Friday in a park and ride area near Highway 16 and Highway 124 in the city of Plymouth, which is about 40 miles east of Sacramento. The Amber County Sheriff's Office initially said that the 66-year-old was found dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but now they have asked the FBI for assistance. Now, Representative Louis Gohmert is out there saying he was going to name names and ends up with a bullet in him. So the wet work is definitely going on here. Okay, there's been another hate hoax. A lot of them out there. Man down in Mississippi who reported hateful, racist, pro-Trump graffiti on his vehicles is arrested for insurance fraud. Apparently, he painted that graffiti on his own vehicle, filed an insurance claim on it, and they caught him. Found out it was a hoax. So, yeah, he's in trouble. He's definitely in trouble. Remember Nick Sandman? He was the student who, with a bunch of other students from this high school, were confronted by this Native American activist pounding on a drum and just trying to provoke them into doing something which they didn't do. And they were smeared in the media outlets. And so Nick Sandman's attorneys have announced plans to sue 5 more media outlets, including ABC, CBS, Gannett, Rolling Stone, and others. And let's talk about Prince Andrew. Apparently, Prince Andrew is facing new court evidence that he did meet with his teenage accuser, Virginia Roberts, despite claiming he had no recollection of the sex trafficking victim. Well, there was a photo taken of them together. It's kind of a little hard to get away from that. But in an exclusive interview with the Mail on Sunday, David Boies said further evidence linking the Duke of York with Ms. Roberts will be made public as part of a string of civil lawsuits being brought in America by victims of serial pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. His comments came after this newspaper last week revealed that a highly respected former Royal Protection officer has raised questions about Andrew's alibi for the night he allegedly had sex with Ms. Roberts in London. Oh, Prince Andrew, going to be in trouble. I'm sure the Queen is not at all happy with what's going on here. Well, apparently Obamacare is back in play. The Supreme Court is going to hear the case of Obamacare again, and it's coming out of a high-stakes abortion case. At issue is a state law in Louisiana which requires doctors who perform abortions to have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. Pro-choice groups argue the law would severely restrict access to abortion and lead to the closure of 2 of the 3 remaining abortion clinics in Louisiana. The case, June Medical Services versus Russo, will be the first to come before the court since Donald Trump appointed 2 conservative justices, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh, to the 9-member panel. The case is significant because the law that is being challenged is more or less identical to the one that the court struck down in 2016, said Mary Ziegler, a law professor at Florida State University. Switching court membership, is that enough to undo a case? Asked Ziegler, author of Beyond Abortion, Roe versus Wade, and the Battle for Privacy. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about computers. And again, it seems like every day there's a new vulnerability, a new way to hack into your private information. And we're going to take another break here for commercials. When we come on back, there's a new Bluetooth vulnerability. This one is nasty. So we'll be back after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to talk about computers and things. And, you know, almost amazing coincidental timing. My wife, the lovely Lady Claire, just got a scam call saying that her social security number had been used for criminal activity and that she would be arrested and go to jail and unless she called 1-800-SUCKERS. So it almost seems like it's open season on ordinary Americans with all this crime that's going on, cybercrime and so forth. So anyway, this morning, Arma Security published details of a new Bluetooth vulnerability that could potentially expose millions of devices to remote attack. It's called Blueborn, and the attack works by masquerading as a Bluetooth device and exploiting weaknesses in the protocol to deploy malicious code. This is similar to the Broadcom Wi-Fi attacks disclosed earlier this year. Now, because Bluetooth devices have high privileges in most operating systems, the attack can be executed without any input from the user. Blueborn doesn't require devices to be paired with a malicious device, can even be set in discoverable mode. Let's take a phone call now from Robert in Illinois. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Is that the beep? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
you're on the air. You're on the air, Robert.
Okay, I did not hear the beep. Okay, so yeah, those scam phone calls, all proceeds now will go to Erdogan to help him create the new Ottoman Empire. So play along. Basically, I was calling about Erdogan and whatever. Look, he says he's letting the floodgates open, and they're saying these are Syrian migrants, Syrian refugees, but it's really not. It's not Syrians. You have Somalis, you have Afghanis, you have Iraqis, the sub-Saharan Africans, everybody but Syrians. So why they keep emphasizing on the Syrian part is beyond many, okay, but you got Africans and so on that are flooding into, opening up, going into Europe and Greece and so on. And he's not just letting them go, they're actually helping them. They're giving them rafts and they're giving them supplies and so on. And these so-called people that are down and out, they're coming with weaponry, Mike. They're coming armed. They're coming with gas, weapons, firearms. They're coming with their own tents. They're setting up their little settlements as they go along. This isn't it's a ploy. It's a Trojan horse. Okay? And in the end, it's the ultimate goal for Erdogan. He wants to force the European Union to help back his play in Syria. That's the ultimate goal here. And he's using these people flooding into Greece and Europe to help him make that come across. But remember, these people many of them are armed. And of course, many of them, always probably maybe mentioned on this show, using the children as human shields and as bargaining chips and so on and so forth, and playing, we can help us and so on. But they are armed. They have food. They have tents. They have weaponry. They're ready to go. What do you got?
Well, it's a mess. Even if they're not trying to form a new Ottoman Empire, it's still highly disruptive to the people of Europe. And the Europeans built Europe. It really is theirs. Anyway, listen, we need to let you go. We need to take a break for station identification. When we come back, we're going to be playing the press conference that's going on coronavirus from the White House. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And right now, Vice President Pence and Ambassador Deborah Birx are conducting a briefing on the coronavirus. They're about 25 minutes in. We're going to back up to the beginning so you can hear the whole thing.
Good afternoon. We just finished the Monday meeting of the White House Coronavirus Task Force. Since the time the President established the task force here at the White House, it has literally met daily, and we continued that effort today. We added the head of the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, Seema Verma, to the task force today, as well as Robert Wilkie with the VA. First, a few basic facts and reports, and then we'll hear from other members of the task force about ongoing efforts. At the present moment, we have 43 domestic cases of the coronavirus, 48 cases of individuals who've returned to the United States. Of the domestic cases, 29 of the 43 are either in California or Washington State. And we have communities that are facing what the experts tell us could potentially be a cluster in those communities. Sadly, today, there were 4 additional fatalities, raising the number that 6 Americans have lost their life to the coronavirus. And on behalf of the President and all of the American people, we extend our deepest condolences and sympathies to the families of those that were lost. Despite today's sad news, let's be clear, the risk to the American people, the coronavirus, remains low, according to all of the experts that we're working with across the government. As the President has said, we're ready for anything, but this is an all-hands-on-deck effort. Today's activity really reflects the President's effort to bring the best minds of private industry together, the best leadership from around the country at every level. We had a good meeting this morning with governors from 50 states and 3 territories. I was able to convey to them the gratitude that the President and our entire administration feels, particularly for governors that are dealing with the coronavirus in their states, those that have taken repatriated personnel. I can say that what I hear from the nation's governors is that there has been a seamless relationship between all the agencies of the federal government and states thus far, and we're encouraged to hear that. But I told them that we are committed to a full partnership with state governments and to their health officials and to local health care providers going forward. We also met today with some of the leaders of the top pharmaceutical companies in the country. The President spoke to them not just about vaccines, which many of the companies are already beginning to work on, but just as importantly, the development of therapeutics. And it is remarkable to think that there may well be a vaccine going to clinical trials within the next 6 weeks. The nature of trials, as the experts have explained to us, is that the vaccine might yet not be available till late this year or early next, but the therapeutics, giving relief to people that contract the coronavirus, could literally be available by this summer or early fall. The most encouraging news from that meeting was that our pharmaceutical companies, which are recognized as the greatest in the world, all have already formed a consortium to work together to share information in the development of therapeutics and vaccines. A quick update, yesterday we were fully implementing the new travel advisories for portions of Italy and South Korea, and the implementation of screening of personnel from across those countries who are trying to take a direct flight to the United States of America. I was pleased in the White House Task Force meeting today to learn that within the next 12 hours, there will be 100% screening, all direct flights at all airports across Italy and across South Korea. The President has directed us to bring the full resources of the federal government and to bring the very best minds in this country to bear on this effort. And finally today, I'm pleased to welcome to our White House team a world-renowned global health official and a physician. She will be my right arm through this effort, as the President has tasked me to lead the White House response to the coronavirus. And I'm grateful that Ambassador Deborah Birx, also Dr. Deborah Birx, will be on our team. And even on her first day, she's already been contributing significantly to our discussions. Dr. Birx serves as the U.S. government's leader today for combating HIV/AIDS globally, and has developed an international reputation as that. She's a scientist, a physician, someone with 3 decades of public health expertise, including virulent diseases, vaccines, and has vast experience in interagency coordination. Dr. Birx and I have talked about the importance of bringing all of these various entities together to bring about President Trump's vision for a whole of government response to the coronavirus. So with that, I'd like to recognize Dr. Deborah Birx for a few introductory and welcome remarks, and thank you for stepping up one more time to serve our country.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. It's a pleasure to be here. I just arrived from South Africa last night. Everybody took great care of me. I had computer and phone in record time. It really shows the level of efficiency and expertise here to really get moving quickly. It's clear that the early work of the President, both with travel restrictions and the ability to quarantine has bought us this time and space to have this task force be very effective. I have never worked with such incredible scientists and thoughtful policy leaders, and I got to spend the day with them. I'm trying to get up to speed as fast as possible, and I look forward to the days ahead of really working together to end this epidemic. Thank you.
Great. Secretary Azar, you bet.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vice President. I just want to first start out by saying how delighted we are that Ambassador Birx is going to be leading, coordinating these efforts across the government. Dr. Birx and I go way back. Dr. Birx and basically every leader at the Department of Health and Human Services go way back together. So we already have established relationships, and maybe not too way back, right? We already have very established, productive working relationships that I think are going to keep the interagency process working incredibly smoothly. And as the Vice President said, Dr. Birx already has been asking the right questions and challenging us on all the right scientific and policy matters that we need to focus on. I just want to begin by recapping the current situation that we face with COVID-19. As the Vice President mentioned, as of this morning, we have 43 confirmed or presumptive cases of the virus in the United States, excluding our repatriated cases. 17 of those cases are travel-related in one way or another. 26 are believed to be person-to-person spread. Because of the President's strong leadership and all of the hard work that our public health professionals have done at the local, the state, the federal level, the immediate risk to any individual American has been and does continue to be low. But the risk for people with possible exposure to identified cases can be high. What every one of our experts and leaders have been saying for more than a month now remains true. The degree of risk has the potential to change quickly, especially if we see sustained spread of the disease around the world, which could qualify this disease as a pandemic. As Dr. Fauci said this morning, we will see more cases of community spread in the United States. As we've emphasized for some time now, we all need to prepare for the potential need. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. In some places, we will have to use the range of our mitigation efforts. In fact, we already are working closely with Santa Clara County and the state of Washington, in particular King County, to assist them in thinking through some of the best practices from our pandemic action plan, as well as learnings from Singapore and Hong Kong around the most effective community mitigation efforts, such as temporary school closures or even more titrated responses Dr. Schuchat has talked to you about, such as having school, but perhaps not having assemblies in school. That's why the President has taken an unprecedented whole-of-government approach to protecting the American people, including the steps in the last few days to radically expand and improve the testing that we have and to improve access to respirators needed by healthcare workers. The Vice President, Dr. Schuchat of the CDC, and I spoke with basically almost every governor that we have this morning, and we greatly appreciate their close cooperation with us. I also wanted to now introduce an individual who I asked the Vice President to have join this task force because the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services play such a vital role. $1.3 trillion of spending here in the United States, providing health care to 60 million American seniors. And as we've seen, this disease can have a disproportionate severity impact on the elderly as well as the medically frail. And so Seema Verma, our administrator, has a very important responsibility with regard to funding of care, whether it's therapeutics or vaccines or diagnostics for our senior citizens, but also a vital role that you may not know of in regulating long-term care facilities, such as nursing homes and other healthcare facilities, a very important regulatory function. So I'm delighted that Administrator Verma is formally joining the task force. And let me turn it over to Seema now. Seema?
Thank you, Secretary Azar. So for the Trump administration and CMS, patients come first, and the health and the safety and welfare of America's patients and provider workforce is our highest priority. So let me start with what CMS is, and as the Secretary said, we are the nation's largest insurer, covering over 130 million Americans between Medicare, Medicaid, and the individual insurance market. And some of these are our nation's most vulnerable populations, those in poverty, the elderly, and children, and so forth. Critically, we do have a regulatory responsibility for pretty much every healthcare institution in America. This includes facilities such as hospitals, critical access hospitals, nursing homes, home health agencies, dialysis facilities, surgery centers, and the list goes on. And that gives us a very critical role in addressing the coronavirus. We are responsible for enforcing the quality guidelines based in part on information from partner agencies like the CDC. And so let me stress that CMS has long-standing infectious disease policies already in place that we've used effectively for other outbreaks such as influenza. And so healthcare facilities already have these procedures in place and should be prepared for what they may see. And we're going to continue to proactively update our regulations. We're going to be working with CDC. Right now, like I said, those are already in place, and it's our job to make sure that healthcare facilities are effectively implementing those guidelines. And we will work with the CDC to determine whether we need to update or change those. Also, we are looking at what we cover and clarifying the types of products and services that our programs will be able to pay for in terms of Medicaid and Medicare. And with that, I'll turn it over.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seema. Thank you for stepping up. I want to recognize a couple of other members of our team. Tony Fauci, the National Institute of Health. Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Vice President. I just want to make three comments and points. First of all, to underscore what the Vice President and with Secretary Asa said, we had a really extraordinary meeting with the CEOs of a variety of individuals in the pharmaceutical and biotech business, several of whom were in the room were people we were actually already actively collaborating with, and their enthusiasm about getting involved in helping us along with the development of products and the availability of products, be they vaccines, monoclonal antibodies, or therapeutics. It was very gratifying. Second, I'm very pleased that the President and Vice President will be visiting the NIH tomorrow, and we're going to have the opportunity to show them firsthand in real time the kinds of things we were doing. And finally, just one comment about Ambassador Dr. Birx. So a couple of people up here have said, you know, I go back a long time with Dr. Birx. Nobody goes back as long as I go with Ambassador Birx. She was actually a fellow in my program as a trainee. And we knew she was a star then. And now what has happened over the years, she's become a superstar. Together, we saw the first patients with HIV back in the early 80s. We were involved in a vaccine trial. That was the first successful trial with HIV. We've known each other through PEPFAR. I had the privilege and the honor, among others, of putting together the PEPFAR program for President Bush, and she was the ambassador in charge of the PEPFAR program. So I can't tell you how excited I am to finally, once again, get back and being a partner with Debbie Birx.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Fauci. And finally, Dr. Bob Redfield, CDC. Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. What I would like to do is just recognize that CDC continues to work and provide support to really the backbone of our public health system in this nation, which is the state, local, tribal, and territorial health departments. And these teams continue to work to identify new cases, isolate and contact trace these, to work together to try to limit the transmission of the coronavirus. And working with our public health partners, we continue to be able to identify new community cases, as the Secretary said, we always anticipated, and use our public health assets to aggressively, again, confirm those cases, isolate, do contact tracing, to use our public health tools to limit the spread of this virus. I want to echo what was said by the Vice President and the Secretary, that despite seeing these new community cases, that shows you we have a public health community across this country in action, the risk to the American people is low. I also want to add my looking forward, and I know my entire agency is looking forward to the President and the Vice President's and the Secretary's visit to come to Atlanta on Friday and get to meet a lot of the wonderful people that form the backbone of this great agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. We'll take a few questions. Steve Holland, Reuters. Where are you, Steve?
Based on what we've seen so far, how quickly do you expect this virus to spread throughout the United States?
Let me refer that to the experts. Go ahead, Bob.
Are there any details about this cluster in Washington State?
And that was the press conference. They're taking questions right now. So we're going to cut away from this. We're coming up here on a commercial break. And again, our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And I have to be very, very honest that this was not a strong confidence builder, because all they really talked about is they're putting a structure together. They're having a lot of meetings, and it didn't really sound like they've got a solution for this. Now, I could be wrong, and if you've got a different opinion, please call on in and sort me out on that. All righty, getting on back to the world of computers and computer-type stuff here. Apple agrees to a $500 million settlement for throttling older iPhones. And it covers people who bought any product in the iPhone 6 and 7 lineup, which Apple secretly throttled to conserve battery life. And apparently the settlement was filed in the California court last Friday. By default, Apple will offer $25, a whole $25, to any current or former owner of a covered iPhone. Named class members will receive $1,500 or $3,500, and around $90 million will go toward attorneys. It looks like the attorneys won that one here. The settlement has a minimum payout of $310 million, so the payment might increase if few people file claims. Conversely, if payments exceed the $500 million cap, each iPhone owner will receive less money. Well, I'm sorry, but, they're mucking about with my iPhone, which I bought and paid for. And I don't think $25 is enough. I think they ought to basically replace the batteries and put the phones back up to the original speed that we paid for. That's what I think ought to happen. It just seems like every time a company shortchanges us on our products, there'll be a settlement, most of which goes to the attorneys, and we're left with an inferior product. Okay, we got to take another break here for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, and a reminder that Republic Broadcasting is in the middle of a fundraising drive. And the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. And the phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. And our television has that little red thing at the top for the emergency broadcast system. Apparently, we are under a tornado watch here right now. So, my goodness, right here in our county. So I'm looking out the window, and it's looking dark and gloomy. And I'm going to have my camera handy in case something noteworthy whizzes by the window. We had a tornado actually hit our street when we lived on Oahu, and it hit just a little way down the hill from us and tore up a tree. So get whisked off to the land of Oz. Okay, apparently Warner Brothers and some of the other media companies did a test of a new 8K television format. We've all seen the 4K televisions in the store, and frankly, my eyes being what they are, I can't tell the difference between regular, high-def TV versus the 4Ks. And apparently this research program, they discovered that most consumers can't tell the difference between 4K and 8K. It depends on your visual acuity and how far you are from the screen. And yes, if you get right up close to the screen, you can see the difference. But if you're sitting back on your sofa, with your beer and your pretzels there in your hand, I think 8K is not going to catch on. It's kind of like 3D. It was a fad, came and went. The TV that we got on our extended warranty is 3D, and I think we've watched it in 3D mode like twice in all the years that we've had it. All right, over in Great Britain, pardon me, there's a woman who claims she was given experimental puberty-blocking drugs at 16 without being warned of the consequences, and she is now the star witness in a landmark case. The Tavistock and Portman NHS Trust, which runs the UK's first gender clinic in London, is being sued over concerns it gave powerful drugs to children as young as 12 years old without proper consent. I mean, 12 years old? That's insane. That's absolutely insane. So this Kiara Bell, 23, started gender reassignment at the clinic when she was a teenager after she felt suicidal and asked to be called by a boy's name in school. She was prescribed hormone blockers to halt the development of her female body after just 3 one-hour appointments. But Ms. Bell has now stopped transitioning and argues staff did not challenge her want to become a teenage boy. Ms. Bell is now waiting to see if she has fertility issues following the drugs and claims she should not have been rushed into treatment because children cannot give adequate consent. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree on that. Children at that age, because they haven't actually hit puberty, they don't know what their sexuality is. I think transitioning children of that age amounts to child abuse. I really do think it ought to be stopped. Okay, there's been a little bit of a whoopsie over at SpaceX. Their Starship super rocket had a little bit of a whoopsie. They were doing a routine pressurization test on the prototype, and it literally ruptured and exploded on the launch pad. They were using inert nitrogen, but apparently it blew up on the launch pad at the company's South Texas facility after being tested for pressure with inert liquid nitrogen. The photographs from the morning after show the extent of the damage, which we're certain will not be reused. Well, if they were using liquid nitrogen, that is very, very cold, and it would have made the outer hull very, very brittle. See what's going to happen with that. All right, the U.S. Department of Defense has upgraded WatchCon 2, a probable crisis, to WatchCon 1, an imminent crisis. People are asking, is this due to the coronavirus? Maybe, maybe not. Apparently over in Lesbos, a Greek Orthodox church has been vandalized by the refugees that are pouring across the border from Syria. More than 500 refugees grouped together to head down to the port of Mytilene from Moria camp. The group was confronted by members of MAT, the tactical police, along the way, and resorted to stoning the Greek authorities in order to continue their journey, only to be met with chemical and flash grenades. Residents on Lesbos remain united and are trying to maintain a strong front against the situation unfolding on their island. Saturday Night Live, I haven't watched it since the original cast there, but apparently John Mulaney opens SNL with a joke about the assassination of President Donald Trump. Guys, that's the shark. That is way, way over the top, and you don't joke about things like that. So, alrighty. Socialist Sanders is the most dangerous major party presidential contender in U.S. history. I'm not entirely sure that that's accurate. Okay, vets in Australia had to pull an entire beach towel out of a python's stomach. Well, those pythons will eat anything. We're going to take a break here for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Tom in Utah. Aloha, Tom. Thank you for waiting. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I didn't hear the word zoonotic epidemiology in that report.
Okay,
and why? CDC is not fully honest. I'm sorry.
Could you
in other
explain?
Words, the primary
Can you explain what that means?
Zoo means animal to man. That's the primary pathway of disease into mankind, is when they handle the blood and tissues of the animal kingdom. The animals don't suffer from the influenza because their body temperatures are higher. They are perfect vectors. They
Well,
should be telling people.
We know that the BSL lab in Wuhan was working with bats.
Right. And the bats infect the other livestock. So they should have been saying to the public, if you're going to prepare an animal for a meal, you should treat it like a surgical operation. In other words, you better be using the same protocols as a food handler, as well as a surgeon in a surgery. You know, it's sad that they don't put that information out there too. That is the primary method of infection.
I don't know that it's a primary method of infection. It's certainly a method of infection.
Primary.
Well, in this case, they were saying that I think it was 26 of the known cases here in the U.S., they had found a contact, either somebody who had been to China or, you know, I understand that animals can pass diseases to humans, whether it's pigs or birds,
Well, see,
or in this case, bats.
The people in China that have been to China are going to be consuming from the common food supply. So
Okay.
It's not necessarily that they've been in touch with somebody, because the organisms don't survive in the environment. They really don't. They have to be protected or shielded within the blood and tissues, the fat of an animal.
Or they can survive within a blob of phlegm when somebody coughs or sneezes. And according to Senator Cotton, the virus particles can survive inside, you know, a phlegm blob for up to 9 days.
Well, anyway, they should be being more honest and let you know that that's another pathway. They want to protect the industry. They don't want to have people freaking out, you know, not buying their steaks and hamburger and stuff. And milk is the one that's really dangerous because it's never sterilized. It's pasteurized, but that's not sterilization. So that is a common pathway too, more common than person to person.
I have a hard time on that one. I understand all of these things can potentially be vectors, but why is it more common than human-to-human transmission, which apparently in the case of COVID-19 has already been established?
Yeah, I'm sure it's been established. Okay. Anyway, we should be talking about that as well. Sure, it's possible to get it person to person, but the other way is even more dominant. They don't say a word. Yeah, that was my field of operations for the first 20 years of my professional experience.
What did you do?
Hunter virus in the Four Corners. What's that?
I was just going to ask, you know, what is your CV? What did you do?
Pathology, both veterinary and human. In fact, I was asked to go down and be adjunct to the Hunter virus experience in the Four Corners in 1996. And they were telling the people it was in the dust and droppings from the rodent, but in fact, the rodents were being consumed by the chickens, and then they were eating the chickens. The chickens have a high temperature, so it didn't affect the chickens except for the pullets, you know, the babies. The same thing with the piglets in 1918 and 1919 when Dr. Cohen observed the die-off of the piglets. So he warned the packing industry there in Missouri and Iowa not to send their product out because the adults who had a stronger immune system, which ended up in the food industry supply for the soldiers including, and that's the way it got to be transferred across the ocean without any problem. The reality is, when you're handling animal tissue like an individual in a surgery, you should be protected. That's what's required in the food handler's permit. So we should be telling people exactly what we tell them in a food handler's qualification.
But once you cook the meat, the virus is dead.
Yeah, but it's the handling previous to the cooking. Because you got little fissures in your hand, that's your fingernails. I mean, not your fingernails, that's your fingerprints. And that'll entrap that blood and tissue from the creature that you're preparing. And if you put your finger in your mouth or your eye or whatever, it's now into your interior. So the reality is they need to be advising people to take cautions or precautions when they're handling a cadaver from the refrigerator.
Well,
and see, the birds from China have been running a relay race across the Aleutian Islands. Isn't it kind of curious that it shows up in Washington, down the coastal area, including California?
Well, the coastal area, that's where all the airports are that the planes are coming into. And apparently 1/3 of the population of Vancouver, Washington is Chinese. The Chinese have been moving over here for quite some time. And that may explain why Washington has got such a disproportionate.
When they're stocking that ship for the travel across the ocean, they're buying or purchasing from the Chinese vendors. So it's not only the soldiers that are vectoring the infection, but it's actually the food supply in the animal products that are not prepared or not cooked thoroughly. But that's the reality. So I just want...
You raise a very, very good point, and somebody ought to be looking at that issue if there is, in fact, a vector in the food supply.
They don't want to interfere with that because it's business. I've worked with the CDC most of my life, and I know they're very cautious about letting people know anything that's going to interfere with business. I hate to say it that way, but that is the fact. And so the best thing to do is just take the same procedural precautions as you would if you were working in a restaurant.
Which means gloves on your hands and a face mask.
Yeah. What an idea, huh?
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, Mike.
Well, thank you very much for that information. And yeah, you do raise an issue that ought to be looked at. And you're right. We didn't hear anything about that in this press conference. I was not impressed with the press conference. All they were saying is we've had meetings with these people, we've had meetings with those people over there.
That's all they do in D.C.
Yeah.
That's all they do in D.C. They have meetings and nothing gets done. Nothing of any real consequence gets done. Anyway, I've been there, done that, and I ended up losing my sight and almost my life when I testified in Congress. They were so grateful for what I was telling them that they made sure I was readjusted. Anyway, I have an attitude about D.C., you notice.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people have an attitude about D.C. right now. Most Americans are not happy with the way our tax money is being spent. And, interestingly enough, they've got a banner headline on the Fox News, should there be an economic stimulus to help fight the coronavirus crisis? So you're right, it's all about the business. It's all about keeping the stock market going. It's all about keeping the markets going. There is a big, ugly cloud out there on the horizon. Going to keep an eye on that one. So thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. I'm going to take a break from the news here because I do want to talk about being prepared. And again, as I said last week, I don't want to scare you. I don't want to be the cause of a panic. But the reality that we have to face is that we're not getting good information from the corporate media, from the government. They've all got different agendas, keeping the stock market going, keeping people's money in the savings accounts. But we're already seeing the panic buying out there in the stores, so things are going to run out. So now is the time to be prepping. Don't wait until it's, tens of thousands of dead already in the streets of America. Now's the time to do it. And as I said last week, if you buy up a bunch of storable food and this thing blows over and turns out to have been nothing, you still have the food. It's not like you're throwing the money away. You're not wasting the money. So you want to have some stored water, storable food, extra vials of your prescription medication for you and for your pets. If your pet is on medication from the veterinarian, you want to have that. Maybe even a spare pair of eyeglasses. You want to have a small stash of cash, junk silver if things really get bad. And again, please do not tell your friends and neighbors what you've got. Advise them, prep, stock up, be ready to deal with this thing. And by the way, I'm sorry, Mr. Surgeon General, I think people should have face masks because we don't know what's really going on. we're being kept in the dark about a lot of this stuff. Okay, we've got another caller on the line, Peter in Los Angeles. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Michael. Yeah, the Costco's around here are out.
Yes.
It's out of everything: toilet paper, canned goods, canned beef, meat, cleaning stuff. If I was going to put one tip, you might have everybody say one tip that is good. A couple bottles of bleach, where
yes.
you can purify water if necessary, and also purify your clothes. Put everything whites or whatever that's bleachable, and put it in and bleach them, and that should help out. But buy a couple bottles, a couple gallons of bleach would be good. But Mike, I listened to that press conference on your show, and it sounded like a bunch of glad handing. Oh, we know each other. Old boy posturing for their 15 minutes of fame that they're hoping to extend. It sounded ridiculous. I wish it would be terse and straightforward and factual. We've got 43 cases or whatever it is. This is going on. This has been declared an emergency. We're taking these actions with suppliers. That's it. We'll see you tomorrow. But I have no confidence in what I heard today. Yeah.
No, me neither. I was not impressed by that meeting at all. They said an infinite deal of nothing, and they said it very well, but it was still an infinite deal of nothing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We don't know anything now that we didn't know before, other than a couple of these guys know each other, and they all think each other are great. It's like the Academy Awards, man.
Yes. You're absolutely right. It's out there.
Mike, another thing is matches.
Yes.
Matches is another thing that everybody's got to have. I don't think people have thought about that, but I'm not. Are we sure that power at some point, did they ever brown out or Wuhan or any of these cities?
Not that I'm aware of. In fact, there was a story that the Chinese government was asking factories to run their electric equipment to keep up demand, to make it look like things were working. But yeah, if you can afford it, having a generator with extra fuel, and you're going to have to, fuel does not store very well for a long period of time. So what you can do is, have a gas can, and you fill your car from the gas can, then you fill the gas can at the gas station so that you have a constantly rotating supply of gasoline. You can, at the auto parts store, get an additive that you can put into a gasoline can that will extend the life of the gasoline, but it's still only going to be for about 6 months. So
is that the limit, Mike? 6 months?
That's my understanding. Is even with the additive, that gasoline starts to deteriorate after 6 months.
Another thing is ramen. The nice thing about ramen is even if the power is out, it doesn't take a lot of energy to boil water for ramen. It takes less energy for ramen than it does for pasta, which is another good one, really. But anyways, that's it for me, Mike. I just want to chime in and say how utterly unimpressed I am. So,
well, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Joe in Nome. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. Yeah, don't forget egg noodles. They keep real good, too.
Yes, they do. So does mayonnaise for some reason.
Well, not that stuff with the olive oil. That doesn't. It's separated on me. But it seems to me, well, I hardly ever get sick, right? If I do catch a cold or the flu, it's only going to last one day. So I was, a couple callers ago, he was talking about surgical masks for food preparers.
Yes.
But it seems to me that any chance of a pandemic would be greatly reduced if people just cook for themselves. Don't go to a place where crowds congregate to eat, out of a single kitchen. It seems to me. At any rate, the other thing I wanted to ask you, did you see a headline in Drudge talking about independents in 2020 outnumber Republicans?
No, I didn't, but I'm not surprised. I think people are getting very discouraged with the two existing parties.
I got such a chuckle out of that. I found a silver round struck, with Donald Trump at 2016.
Yeah.
with a terrible frown on it. And so
all right,
I took that. Yeah.
Joe, we got to let you go. I'm sorry. We got to take a commercial break. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today, and we are under a tornado watch here in southern Indiana, extending into Kentucky, and the watch is going to run until 1 o'clock tomorrow morning. And I was looking at the radar image, and there are some very suspicious-looking hot spots to the south of us, nothing really close to where we are, but we've already called all the friends and relatives and said, are you aware that this is going on? So the word has gone on out. All righty, so we're talking about prepping. We're talking about, again, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. They even made that comment during this press conference. And we all hope this is going to blow over. We hope it's going to be as here today, gone tomorrow, as SARS or MERS or the swine flu back in 2009. But what if it isn't? And you need to be prepared. And Peter was right. You should have matches, preferably weatherproof ones that have been dipped in wax, or a whole bag of disposable lighters. You should have probably a little stash of fuel someplace, maybe a little portable cook stove. And again, you need to look at your current situation, what you've got, and obviously all of this stuff costs a little bit of money and effort to put together. But what you need to be thinking about is what happens if you have to stay in your home for, say, 3 weeks. Now, that's not the longest incubation period that has been observed. Apparently, the longest one, according to that article in the British press, 94 days. That's 3 months. I think government-mandated quarantine, they're still saying 2 weeks' time. So that's what you should plan for, being able to feed your family, take care of them for a minimum of 2 weeks. You keep your door closed, you keep everybody inside. And have a good radio. Keep the batteries out of the radio. One of the things that really annoys me, and I discovered this when we were moving from Oahu, is that batteries left in electronics will leak. Even the ones that say will replace your whatever if the battery leaks. Well, if you're dealing with a crisis situation, an emergency, the warranty is worthless. Because what are you going to do? Drive on down and get the replacement batteries and a replacement radio? So, anyway, certainly around the world, it looks like people are taking this very, very seriously. I don't remember this much of a froth up of closures and panic buying back in 2009 with the When Pigs Fly flu. So again, assess your current situation. Just say, am I ready to keep my family indoors at home for 3 weeks without having to contact the outside world? And by the way, one other thing that bleach is good for is sterilizing contact surfaces like shelves or some, countertops. If somebody comes over to your house and visits and then turns out they've got the virus, you can use the bleach to wipe down wherever it is that they touched, because the bleach will just rip the DNA apart. Okay, there's the music. Time for us to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Please stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. And we'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.